Okay, guys, welcome to a session of our third session of Crafty Illustrations. And apologies for the last five minutes of ranting. I just realised that I've had my mic turned off. Um, okay, let's get to it then. So this is the second session of Crafty Illustrations. Okay, um, and what we are looking at doing in Crafty Illustrations is creating artwork, vector-based artwork, basically. Um, you might ask, what is vector-based artwork? And vector-based artwork is a different way of creating artwork. So a lot of people might be used to hearing the term raster or bitmap images, and they are just your general images that you might take photographs on your phone and things like that, and they'll be raster-based images. And as you can see, they're created using using little blocks, little building blocks called pixels. Now, the trade-off to using a raster-based image is that once if you've got a set image, say an A4 image, and you want to scale it up to A1 or bigger, that image doesn't contain enough information to be able to scale that up. So what the computer tries to do craftily is to try and scale that image up and how predict how many more pixels is needed in that image, and what those colors might be. So you end up with a really blurry image. Okay, the great thing about vector-based images is that you can create an image which could be the size of a postage stamp, and you could scale it up to the size of a billboard on the side of a building, and you wouldn't lose any quality, because unlike raster images where the image is made from little building blocks, unlike that, it's based on a mathematical scenario. So you'll have the actual coordinates, that the point that the artwork is but the artwork will be made, the shapes will be made from points, and those points will be set in relation to each other. So it doesn't matter how big that image or those shapes increase in size, they'll be they'll be at a relative distance to each other. Equally, the color will be certain colors and gradients will be mathematically worked out, so that when you scale up the image, you won't lose any quality. So that's what we're looking at working with throughout the next few sessions. Okay, so today we are going to look at using a really exciting tool called the Gradient Mesh tool. And the Gradient Mesh tool is quite an advanced tool, but I want to try and demonstrate its power really, and how we can create some really, really cool bits of artwork with different shades and different gradients, to try and create something like really realistic. Okay, and I was playing around with it earlier just before the session, and let's have a look. So I was looking at creating a tomato. This is an actual photograph of a tomato, and I was actually messing around with the gradient mesh tool to try and create a similar kind of effect with the highlights and shadows and things like that. So we're going to look at creating something similar to this today. I'm going to go back and I'm going to make this document available for you guys um, to um, to play around with after the session as well, and I'll talk you through the document also. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at today, and we're going to utilize some of the tools that we used in the previous couple of sessions um, to um, to move that artwork forward. Now, when we started the session in session one, we created some artwork for a birthday party, as mentioned before, and what we're going to do today is we're going to develop that artwork to utilizing some of these techniques that we're going to be learning in today's session. Okay, so this is the artwork that we created in session one, the actual line drawings, little sketches of that was going to be used as a base to create the vector based imagery. And as you can see, over the sessions we've developed some artwork here with the 70th numbers on here, some candles and some like icing that will be sit on a cake. We've got a racing car here that we started to develop last week. And the reason why I want to look at using the mesh tool today is because I want to try and add some shading to this car. And I want to add some realistic shading to this car and add some contours to it, so it looks it looks 3D, and it's not just flat like this image here. And we're going to utilize that tool today to do that. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it, and I'll explain out the document as I go. This will be this session. Session 3 will be separated into 2 halves, so we'll have a little break at 2 o'clock, and then we'll go and try and mimic what we've done in Adobe Illustrator. We're gonna move into Inkscape, which is a free vector-based image generator, or the vector-based image bit of software that's for free, and we're going to try and create a similar kind of effect in there as well, so you've got 2 comparisons. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up our artwork from last week. Again, this will be made available for you at the end of the session, and then you can go back and play around with and follow the video and play around with the tools at your own pace. Okay, anybody who's got any issues, please feel free to let me know in the chat, and then we'll do our best to incorporate and answer any of your questions during the session. Okay, so last week we created this car, and we created this car using shapes. Okay, very basic shapes, cylindrical and circle shapes, and we added them all together to create this nice little curvy looking car. Okay, and what we're going to do, like I say, we're going to add a nice gradient to that now what I'm going to do, just to demonstrate, we did play around with gradients last week and we created these nice wheels. What I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate using a gradient on this car, and then I'm going to a very basic gradient on this car, and then we're going to do it in a different way to try and add a bit more realism. Now, what is a gradient, some of you might ask? Well, a gradient is just a transition of color. So a gradient is I'll show you a very quick example. Here's a square here. A gradient is this tool here, and if we bring up, excuse me a minute, bring up our gradient toolbar here. Okay, what we can do, a gradient is a transition of one color to another. Okay, you could have many different colors in this gradient. You could have infinite colors in there. You could also have here we go there, and you can create some really cool effects. Now this is what's known as a linear gradient. Okay, so the color changes from one side to another at a set angle. So this angle is set at 0 at the minute. It's set just on one line, but you can change all that in a control panel which sits down here, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in a minute. Okie doke then. What we're going to do now is we're going to create a new document, and I'm going to point out the basics of gradients first, and then we're going to look at the gradient meshing tool. Okay, so we're going to go File, New. We're going to click OK. It doesn't really matter what size the image is at the minute, because we're just playing around what size the artwork is. So I clicked OK because it was A4, but you might have A3, you might have different sizes. It really doesn't matter. Okay, and as mentioned in the other sessions that I've been hosting, please don't get bogged down with all these different buttons, all these different tools and things like that, because what I want to try and do is I want to try and introduce you to some really cool tools one by one, And the other tools we'll just leave to one side. We don't need to know them all. I'm just gonna show you a few to try and hopefully get your interests and your juices flowing, so you can then look at some of the other tools yourself. Okay, so we've got a load of different tools here. I only know a handful of them, so that's what I'm going to show you. And we've got some boxes here that are open. Okay, and these boxes, I'll just put them down here, out the way for now. If we go to let's have a look for a minute. Workspace, and click Essentials. And click on go Windows, Workspace, and then click. Make sure you've got Essentials clicked. And what that will do is it will just set up your workspace so that you've got all the tools available that you need. Okay, and I'm just moving things about here. Just so it's more convenient for myself. So what we've got here, undo that. What we've got here, guys, we've got our tools on the left hand side. We've got some options at the top, and then this toolbar on the this is like a these are control bars that sit on the left. Okay, so whatever you select here on this side, which is a tool, say I'm going to click the rectangular tool. If I click on this here, well, maybe not the rectangular tool. If I click on the text tool, for example, here's my text here, and it'll allow me to control what text I have in this box. So I can change the size, the font, etc., etc. So you've got your tools on your left, control bars on the right. So let's get to the gradient. So what we need to do is we need to create a shape in order to put the color inside. Okay, so if we create a shape, there's your rectangular tool there. If you hold down on that rectangular tool, we've got some other different shapes here. So you could choose a polygon tool if you want, or an ellipse, or whatever. I'm going to choose the rectangular tool. If you click on your workspace here, click and hold down your mouse and drag your shape, there's your color. Okay, there's your shape. If you look at your color on at the top here, which looks a little bit like a palette, if you click on that, these are the different colors that you can apply to this shape because it's selected. So if I click on the green area, it's going to change it to green, blue, red, etc. Okay, orange, yellow. Okay, there's different ways you can view your color. You can have swatches as well, which are predefined colors here. Okay, and that's just one big solid color. So as you notice, if I click on the green, this here changes to green because that's what that shape is, and that's the color that I've selected. If I click my selection tool and click on this space to make sure that I don't have this selected, and then I click on pink, and then I click back on my rectangular tool to create a rectangle, another rectangle, and I draw a rectangle, it's going to be pink because I've selected the color that I want it to be. Okay, so that's adding a basic fill to a shape, and that could be any shape. Okay, as long as as long as it's a closed shape. And what I mean by a closed shape is it doesn't. If you're drawing a circle, for example, or any type of shape, as long as you start and end at the same point, that's a closed shape. Okay, for example, if you draw a circle in the sand, but you don't return your finger back to the start point, and you stop about 5 inches before the start point, that's an open shape, and that means you can't add the color to it. So that's the basic fills, and that is the fill color. And if you hover over the color on the left hand side, it'll tell you fill. This here is stroke, okay? And the stroke, if I click on it and I change the stroke color to say a blue, the stroke to that image, if I zoom in, goes to blue, okay, or purple. And the stroke is just basically the outline of that shape. And there's your strokes there. If you click on that there, this button here is the controls for your strokes, and here you can alter the thickness of that stroke. Okay, that's at 40, that's at 10, etc., etc. Okay, so you've got your fill and your strokes there. So to create a gradient, a gradient is created by doing something very similar. Instead of adding a fill, what you're doing is you're going to apply the gradient to the shape. So you can either draw the shape out like we already have done now, and click on the gradient tool. Okay. Okay. So you can select the shape that you want to add the gradient to by clicking the black arrow there, which is a selection tool. If you click on that, make sure the green is selected, or whatever color you have. Make sure that it is in front of your line, your stroke tool, not behind. And to do that, if you do find that the stroke tool is in front of this, you can just click this little arrow here and it swaps it around. If you just bear with me 1 minute, I'll try and show you in a little bit better. So as you can see here, if you look at my my colors, this is the fill color and this is the stroke, and as you can see, the stroke is selected at the minute because this stroke sits on top of the fill. Okay, if I want to swap those colors around and I want to make the fill the blue and the stroke orange, all I do is click on this little arrow to swap them around, and as you can see, they swapped around here. So what we need to do when we're working on a fill, when we're working on a gradient, we need to make sure we have this selected. You want to click on the fill first to make sure it's sitting on top of the stroke. Okay, so once you've created your shape, which we've done here, you go to your gradients here. Now the gradient looks like this. The control bar for the gradient looks like this. If you click on the actual gradient here, this allows you to turn that one flat color into a gradient, and the default color is from white to black. Okay, now if you want to change the colors, what we can do is we can click anywhere at the bottom and introduce new colors to it. And if you can see here, this is the gradient slider, this here, and if you see underneath, the little plus has appeared at the bottom of the gradient slider. And if you click it, you've added a new color. And if you click on that shape, that box there, and click on your swatches, you can choose a different color. Oh, bear with me 1 minute. If you pick, sorry, bear with me 1 minute. If you click on the color that you want and hold down and drag it to your slider, my apologies, then you can add the color swatch to your gradient. Okay, and if you want to add a different color, just click on the swatch that you want, click and drag it, there you go. If you want to add a different color, click, drag and add it. Okay, and just keep on adding the colors until you get the the gradient that you're happy with. Now, as you can see, there's more blue on this side than the others. So what you can do is then you can move these along and evenly space them to get even distribution of color there. Okay. Now, as mentioned in this example here, this is a linear gradient, which means the color moves from one point to another in a line. Okay, and you can change that angle by clicking on this drop down here. If you click on that, you can change the angle of the gradient, or you could simply type in your angle there. Okay, now there's also, this is still a linear gradient because the color changes from one side of the shape to the other. But if we click on this drop down, we can also change it to a radial, and this is what we did last week. Click on that. That allows the color to transition in a circular motion. Okay, and again, we can tweak these as much as we like till we get our desired effect. So that is your gradient, your basic gradient. And what is really cool about this is you can create really nice backgrounds, for example, by, let's say we want to change this to a linear, and we want to take a few of these colors out. So if you want to take the colors out and remove them, click on their little handle and pull them away. Click, hold, and pull away. Click, and let's say we want to go from like a nice dark blue sky to try and create an evening kind of feel. You can do that quite easily. Maybe you want a nice black color at the end there. And then we could rotate that, say 90 degrees, and there you've got a sky type scenario going on. And then you could introduce other shapes, like say stars here, and you might want to put those as change the color, and you can create really cool effects. Okay, and that's your basic linear gradient. What we are going to do today is we're going to try and change this slightly. So wherever you've got a shape that has something a bit more complicated going on, like this car, for example, or this tomato, for example, the gradients don't change from one to another. Very straightforward. They follow the contours and shapes of the tomato in this example, or the car, which we're going to try and apply in a little bit later on in the session. So what we need to do is we need to define where these contours, roughly where these contours are, and then Illustrator then helps you create a gradient that falls and wraps around those contours. Okay, so let's have a look at doing that. So this is your linear gradient. We're going to now look at your gradient mesh tool. Okay, so what you need to do is, if you go to Google and type in tomato or banana, let's say, or whatever you like, a nice like curvy type fruit. I'm gonna say I'm gonna try an apple this time, or pear. Okay, I'm going to use this pear here. Actually, no, I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to use this one here. This one's better. Okay, and what I want you to do, guys, I just want you to right click on this image, and I want you to click open image in new tab, brings that up here, and you can either right click on it and save the image, or you can press print screen, which I like to do. And I want you to create a new document. So file, new. You'll be presented with lots of options here. Don't worry about them too much. Just make sure your size is A4. That's set to print. Size is A4. Click OK. So if you've saved the image and you've right clicked on the image and you've clicked File, Save As, and I'll just save it to my desktop as well. I'm going to show you two different ways of doing it. Now I'm going to, if you save your image, it's going to be in your downloads folder. So if you go back into Illustrator and click File, Place, go to your downloads. Mine will be in my this PC downloads here, and if I can find that image somewhere, I'll put it on my desktop, didn't I? Apologies. There it is. Just click on the image, click place, and it's going to bring that image into your document. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Another way, which I like to do, which avoids you saving the image to your computer, if you don't need if you're only using the image as a reference, I like to just screen grab the image. So what I mean by screen grab is if you click on print screen on your keyboard, which is just above, it should be just above them. If you look at the 9 number on your keyboard, if you go up to the F12, it's the next button along. If you press that, that will just capture the entire screen, and then you can just press Control and V to bring that image in, and there it is there. Now, just to avoid confusion here, guys, I've got two screens running at the minute, so that's why it's brought this extra bit here. Okay, we only need to worry about this. So what I'll do is I'll just create a little rectangle around here. I'll select my rectangle by clicking the black tool, select this entire image, right click and click make clip and mask, and that allows you to just crop that image. Okay, so there's two different ways of bringing an image into your computer, into your Illustrator document. Okay, so once you've brought your image in, what I would like you to do, I would like you to click on this button, which is your layers button. If you can't locate that, if you go to Windows and Layers, when you create a new document, you always have what layer 1 set there, and you can have as many layers or as little as you like. Okay, we've brought that image in to layer 1. If you click that little button there, there's your image there, and this little eye allows you to hide and show the image that you brought in. What we're going to do with this image is we're going to just use it to trace around. Okay, so to do that, what I want to do is I want you to create a new layer. So click on the bottom here, and it's the second from the last button at the bottom. If you click that, there you can see layer 2. And what I want you to do is double click on layer 2, and it'll allow you to change the name, and we're going to call it working drawing. Click enter. Okay, now with your Pear, which is on layer 1, what I want you to do is click the little box next to the eyedropper, or the eye, sorry. Click on that, and that allows you to lock that layer, which means you can't move it, you can't edit it, you can't do anything while it's been locked. Okay, and I want you to return to your working layer by clicking on the working layer button there. Okay, now last week we used a tool called the graphic pen tool, and we're going to use that graphic pen tool to create this shape here. We're only going to concentrate on this full Pear for the time being. Okay, and we're going to trace around this shape, and then we're going to apply the gradient mesh to it. Okay, so the graphic pen tool is this here, this tool here, and what I want you to do is I want you to just click with really small clicks. I just want you to go all the way around, and it will draw a straight line from each click all the way around. And where you get to this section here, just make it up. You know, there's no real importance at this stage. Just make it up. Just go around the image, and all it's doing is creating a really jaggedy shape around the image. I'm just going to do it roughly just to show you. Then if we go to our swatches, and then let's change it to a different color than green so it stands out. So let's change it to pink or something like that. And if we zoom right in by clicking Alt and using the wheel on your key on your mouse and zoom in, you can see these are just straight lines. Now the smaller those between each click, the easier, well not the easier, but the smoother those curves are, and that's a really good way to get used to using that graphic pen tool. Okay, so just go around that image and trace it. I'm going to show you another way of using that graphic pen tool now by creating curves. Okay, and we touched on this last week, so we're going to do it again just to kind of cement your learning. Instead of clicking really little small clicks like this, what I want you to do is I want you to click once. I want you to click on the other side of the curve, hold down, and I want you to move your mouse while you're holding down on your mouse button, your left mouse button, and that'll allow you to create this lovely, nice sweeping curve here. Okay, and I want you to do the same here. And what you're going to have is sometimes you're going to have an issue where the curve is a little bit too acute, but don't worry about it. Just roughly get that shape in, and we'll come back and edit it later. Okay, so I'm going to draw my curve. So click, hold, and move your mouse a little bit. Click, hold, and move your mouse. Click, hold, move your mouse, just to create these curves. And as you can see, you need a lot less clicks to get this to follow the curve. Okay, and then bring it back to the center. I'll bring it back to the starting point. Remember the starting point, a bit like if you're drawing your name in the sand or drawing a circle in the sand or something like that. You need to go all the way back to the beginning. And I'm just going to zoom in to show you. To finish off my drawing, if I hover over the start point, can you see the little circle that appears? That means that's closing that shape. So it'll allow it to fill that colour in. Okay. Now for these areas that need tweaking slightly, what we need to do is we need to click, hold down on this direct selection tool and select the top one. Okay, and if you click these individual points, what you can do is you can move these individual points and get it roughly where you want it to be. What you can also do is you can go back to your pen tool, hover over the line and add another point, which will then give you a bit more control of your image, which then you can then drag out to create a bit more, to follow the shape a little bit better. Then you can use these little points. Click on this little point here, so click your little direct selection tool again, select these anchor points, and then you can stretch these out a little bit more to create that curve. Okay, so once you've created your shape, which looks a little bit like that, it doesn't need to be perfect, and you filled it with a basic color, what we're going to do now is we're going to create those curves like I was explaining before. Okay, we're going to create those curves. I'm just going to go to my, you don't need to do this, but I'm just going to go to my working document, hide that for a minute just to show you the pear. So as you can see, the pear's got, if you looked at the pear, it would have this curve all the way around, and this curve would like come out here and it would change shape and go in a little bit, and that's what we're going to try and create here. Now the gradient mesh tool here looks a little bit like this. Can you see? It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 buttons down, and if you just hover over it, it'll tell you it's a mesh tool. Or if you press U as a shortcut, it'll select it for you. And what it does, allows you to do, it allows you to select your image, select your shape, and add these curves to your shape. And if you just go around the shape, all the way around clockwise, it's going to add some automatic curves. Lines which we are then going to adjust ourselves. Okay, click on the lines. You can split these up a little bit more by clicking on the line once, clicking on the line, clicking on the line. See here, if you click there, it should be create another line going down. Click there just to break those images into smaller little chunks. Okay, let's do it here as well. Now this is a really advanced tool, this, guys. I only started using it the at beginning of this week when I was looking for something cool to show you, and it's really effective, and you'll see in a minute. So all I'm doing is splitting the shape up into squares basically, so I can then select where I want my color to be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on my selection tool. I'm going to click on the pear, my shape that I've just created, and I'm going to move it to one side so I've got pear as a reference. Okay, so what we've got is we've got a basic shape. Well, it's not really a basic shape. We've got this quite nice shape here, and then we have split it up into a mesh. Now what we need to use is this direct selection tool. If you click on it, what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and give the shape, the pear, this darker kind of golden browny color here. Okay, but first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to click on this mesh tool, or click on this shape. We're going to go to our swatch. No, we're going to click on this to on the shape. We're going to click on this button, which is the eyedropper, and what that allows you to do is pick up a color from anywhere in your workspace, and I want to pick up the color in the middle, and that will change the entire shape to that one color that I've just picked up from there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create this dark shade here around this left hand side of the shape. How to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to click on this button, which is called the Lasso Tool. If you press Q for shortcut and you zoom in, Alt and your wheel on your mouse, what you can do is you can select this area here, and if you notice, guys, all these points are control points that you can move and manipulate wherever you want. Okay, so what I've done here is I've used this lasso tool, and what I've done is I've clicked on my outside of my shape, and I've drew around with my mouse all the way around, holding down my mouse button all the way around to the starting point, and that selects all those control points in that little lasso that I've just selected. Now what we can do is we can go back to our eyedropper, which is this button, click on it, and click on sample, and click on this shape color here, and as you can see, it's created that dark shade there. And you can choose different shades by just moving and clicking, That's probably a little bit better because it's a little bit lighter. And we're going to try now and create this red tone here. So again, back to your Lasso Tool. I want you to select some roughly around this area, maybe around here. And it's just rough, guys, just to get an idea. Go back to your eyedropper to select and sample color. Click on that, and there you go. You've got your red there. And then we're probably going to have a little highlight here. So back to your Lasso Tool. Oh, excuse me, click on that. Back to your Lasso Tool. Select this bit here. Click on your eyedropper, click on the highlight, and that'll create that highlight. Now, as you can see, the highlight is quite square in relation to that, and that's because when we've divided the shape up, the shape is the gradient only fits within these squares here. And what we can do is we can control that a little bit later. Okay, but if we get the basic shapes in that shades in now, we can go then and edit that a little bit later. Okay, so we're going to go back to our Lasso Tool and get a bit more color in there. So we're going to select this little portion on our pear, select that, back to your eyedropper to sample the color to make that a little bit lighter, and we'll give it a bit more of a shadow at the bottom. So back to our Lasso Tool, we're going to select the bottom piece, we're going to go to our eyedropper, click that color there, and maybe one touch more here for that dark shape there. So the Lasso Tool, select the area that we want to shade around here. In fact, I'm going to just go over the red a little bit instead, all the way around, and then I'm going to click my eyedropper, click on that, and there you go. So the colors are starting to now resemble the colors in this actual picture, and as you can see, that's quite a difference from the original image that we had. And I'll just go back a few steps. There we go. That was the original that we started off with, and this is the difference. Now, it doesn't look perfect and it doesn't look photoreal, but it looks a lot better than that one does anyway. So to create a bit more smoother, more organic shape here, what we need to do is we need to add a few more contours in here. So what we can do, or we can edit the shape of these control points. Now to do that, it's a bit like when you create a shape. And I'm going to just quickly draw a rectangle, click on my direct selection tool, click on that point on one of the corners. If you click your direct selection tool, that allows you to move the point. And you can do exactly the same with your shape here. So what we can do now is we can manipulate that shape a bit. Okay, to kind of change these contours. Okay, so if we want this a bit rounder, we can do that. We can click on here, we can move that a little bit more. We can and I'm just doing this just to show you like what happens when you manipulate, when you move things around. And as you can see, the gradients start to create other contours and start influencing the shape of the gradients there. To add more contour lines here, you go back to your mesh tool, click on the points here to create more contours. Like I have here, if you hold down Alt, you can get rid of contours that are too close to each other. and you can add more by not pressing Alt and just clicking on the lines there to create more contours there. Now up here we've got a really tight line next to it, so I'm going to get rid of that. And what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and change this contour lines. Instead of going in, I want it to sweep out like that. Now to do that, what do we need to do? Let's have a look at the shape. Probably need to click on this one here. Need to move that out. And this here is literally just trial and error. So move your points about. What we might want to do actually is remove this line, because this line seems to be that looks a little bit better actually. So you can see the difference there by removing that line, pressing Alt, pressing our mesh tool, pressing Alt. That makes it a little bit more of a smoother transition from here to there. So we're going to keep that like that. What else do we want to do? We might want to add a little bit of green there. Back to your Lasso Tool, back to here. See if get the color picker. There you go. And that's all it is. It's about cycling through your mesh tool to add and take away points, using your direct selection or your lasso tool to select the points that you want to recolor. So I might want to add some more green to this area. Now I've got rid of my highlight, which isn't a problem. There, and then I might want to add the highlight in again by just selecting that area here. There we go. Okay, so it's just a case of playing around with that shape, and as you can see, you can start building up a really quite a cool effect here. Now what I want to try and do in the next half of the session is just try and refine these curves a little bit, and then I'm going to show you. I don't believe Inkscape has this kind of an advanced tool, but I do have some suggestions on how you can create something similar in Inkscape. So in a couple of minutes we're going to have a little break, and then we're going to break for 10 minutes, and then we're going to come back. I'm going to refine this a little bit more, and then I'm going to go to Inkscape and we're going to try and do the same thing. We're also going to try and take what we've learned from this gradient mesh tutorial, and we're going to apply it to our artwork on this car as well. Okay, so we're going to try and make that car give the car some contours, so we can add a gradient to that. Okay, so guys, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a little break now for 10 minutes, come back at 2:10, and then we're going to resume refining this image here for a few more minutes when we get back, and then we're going to go and look at trying to do this in Inkscape. Okay, so if you return back at 2:10, we'll look at picking up. Okay, thanks very much guys, and I'll see you in 10. Okay, guys, welcome back to our second half of our um, session 3 of Crafty Illustrations. Before the break, we looked at creating a little. We looked at playing around with the gradient mesh tool in Illustrator, okay, to create this cool curvy kind of shape here from a basic shape, which was this. To try and mimic the colors of this pear here. What we're going to do is we're going to just have a little bit more of a play around with this image, okay, with this object, sorry, and we're going to try and refine some of these curves. And then what we're going to do is we're going to try and replicate this kind of gradient um, mesh in Inkscape, okay, and then we're going to apply this learning to our artwork, which is here, where we're going to apply a gradient mesh to the car, which forms our artwork for our 70th birthday. Okay, so let's get back to Illustrator. If we click on the Illustrator button, and then we click on the working document that we've been playing around with. Now, just a quick recap. The gradient mesh tool is here. Okay, so remember, to add more curves or take away curves, you can click on the gradient mesh tool, and you can hover over the curves or the lines and press to add another curve. You can press the point there, or you can remove curves by pressing Alt first, holding down Alt, zoom in a little bit, hold down Alt, hover over the curve of the line, and then press it, and it will remove that line there. Okay, and as you can see, it's actually creating a better curve for us here now by doing that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for a few of these curves. I'm going to remove a couple of these curves here by pressing Alt, clicking on the lines to try and really refine this shape, because at the minute it's looking a little bit too geometric. It's got some cubey kind of shapes going on here, which I'm not quite happy with. And as you can see, by actually removing some of these curves here, we're creating a bit more of a smoother transition between the colors. Okay, so we're going to continue that. This is just trial and error, guys. I thought I needed to add a few more lines, but I was mistaken there. Just shows you by adding a few taking away some lines, we get a bit more of a better transition between the color, and that's really taking shape now, isn't it? We zoom up to the top. Let's get rid of a few more of these lines here. Do every one. That's really smoothing out that color there, isn't it? So I guess a good rule of thumb really is to maybe start off with less, and then if you really find that your wings are clipped a little bit and you can't get the kind of transitions that you want, then I would add a bit more. But look how smooth that is now. It's looking quite good. Quite happy with that. Maybe get rid of this one, see what happens. And obviously, the more lines that you get rid of, the fewer places that you need to click to try and fewer control points that you need to play around with, which is also a good thing in my eyes. Let's do that a little bit. And what I'm doing here is this is just trial and error. So I'm clicking on my control point here, and where that's drooping down, I want it to curve up. So I'm clicking the anchor point here, holding down and just moving that up, just to see what that does. It's getting there, but this here, it's a bit too sharp there, so I'm going to pull that in a little bit. And that's kind of getting where I want it to be, roughly. and that's looking quite good. That, yeah, for first attempt, I would say. Now I'm going to do something on the fly as always. Not afraid of kind of messing up live on the show, but so let's just put it out there. See if I can create some of these dots. There's two ways. With my little knowledge of Illustrator, there's two ways I would like to try and do that. And if I don't do it, I'll hopefully introduce you to a couple of more things that you can play around with in Illustrator. So the one thing I want to try before, one thing I always do when I'm working in Illustrator or any other program that and I'm trying something new, always make a copy, because whenever I make a mistake, you've always got that copy to refer back to. So to do that, click on the image or the shape. I keep on calling it image, but it's a shape. This is an image. This is an actual photograph. This is the shape. So click on the shape, hold down Alt, make sure I've got my selection tool selected, hold down Alt and click and drag. You're going to create a new shape there. So what I'm going to try and do is add some dots to this shape. And I'm going to do that by playing around with the appearance palette. The appearance palette looks a little bit like the sunshine here. If you click on that, that brings up this, whatever you've got selected, that brings up some kind of controls that you can add or mess about with for that shape. If you click at the bottom here, you can add some effects. So let's click on that FX button, and there's a lot of little different things that we can do here, but the one thing I'm interested in is I think it's going to be the in the Photoshop effects. I'm looking for noise, if we can find noise. And if we can't find it, I've got another idea. Now, actually, I can't find noise, but if you've got a texture, that might add a texture to that image. If you click grain, see what happens. There should be another little box that pops up. Computer's just working it out. There we go. It's adding a bit of a texture, which is quite nice actually. This is basically, I'm going to zoom. I'm going to cancel this. I'm just going to do it again for you, so you can see what I'm actually doing. So clicking on the shape, clicking on that little sunshine there, and this is the appearance of that shape, and it's telling you it's a mesh shape. It's got an opacity default, which will be set to 100%. And if you want to change the opacity and how transparent it is, you just click on the opacity there. But what we want to try and do is add an effect. So we're going to click the FX button. We're going to go down to texture, and we're going to hover over to grain. Now I'm not sure whether this is going to work, but we can give it a go. Click on grain. It's going to open up a panel, a new window here. Just give it a minute. There we go. And there's the grain. Added like a fine kind of speckle on there, and we can increase the intensity of that grain, or we can drop it right down. Okay, we can increase the contrast, or we can drop it right down. Okay, so that grain's quite good. And if you look at, so basically this is the preview of that effect. This is the zoom in option, so you can click on minus here, and that looks quite good. This is zoom in and zoom out. These are the different effects that you can apply to it, and this is the grain effect. So I've selected grain. I've got some controls here, and then you can, if you want to see what it looked like before I had the grain applied to it, you can click the eye button here, and that does look good, but it isn't precisely that look that we were going for there. But we might want to keep it, we might not. Let's just cycle through some of the other options to see if there's anything else in there that might add some kind of realism to our image. So I'm going to click on this one. Nope, that's going to do nothing. So I'm not going to do that. Stylize, texture grain, texturizer. And this is a really fun way of just editing, you quite dramatically editing your images there. I can't see anything that's really going to help us, if I'm honest. So I'm going to come out of there, cancel that. Actually, I'm going to go into there and add that grain as a base. I'm going to add that basic grain as a base. Click OK once the computer's sorted itself out. And I'm going to just quickly explore one last thing before I move into Inkscape. Now if you look now at the shape, can you see grain has been added to that shape now? So you can, if you didn't like it, or if you wanted to edit it later, you can just click on grain. It's going to take you to that window and you can mess about with the grain. Now computer's running a little bit slow, so it's probably going to take a while to go back. I'm just going to cancel that for a minute. You can also hide it as well, okay? But we're going to keep that on. I'm going to just quickly show you one last thing. And again, I'm not sure whether, I think it could work, so let's give it a quick go. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little circle. I'm going to move away from my shape there. I'm going to move over here. I'm going to click on my circle tool or my ellipse tool and draw a circle. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to change the color of that circle to a dark brown, and I'm going to zoom into that. Remember how we sampled the colors from last time? Click on the eyedropper, click on your dark brown color, and zoom into your shape. Now all I'm doing to navigate around my document here is, if I want to go here, I'll move my cursor to the area that I want to zoom in, hold down Alt and zoom in. If I want to zoom out, I'll hold down Alt and zoom out. If I want to go over here and zoom in, you zoom in. Okay, so that's how you would zoom in. Now what I'm going to do, it's not going to look perfect, but I think this might work. I'm going to create a copy of that by pressing Alt, drag in here, Alt and drag in there. I'm going to select these and I'm going to go to my swatches and I'm going to create a pattern. Now I'm just roughly doing this. I'm going to talk you through it at another time. But what I want to do is I want to apply this pattern to this shape just to see what it will do, and then we're going to move on, and I'm going to show you patterns in a little bit more detail next week because it's quite cool. Okay, so if we click on this shape here, I'm going to add a new fill layer. So we're in our appearance, back into our appearance, sunshine, click on the sunshine, add a new fill layer. Now the great thing about adding things to this, adding layers and effects to this one shape, is that you can turn them on and off. Now this fill layer here, just applies a really well, applies just it's applying a black color to that shape at the minute. Okay, and we can change the color that it adds by just choosing this. But what we want to do is we want to apply this pattern to that image there, and as you can see, it's applied that pattern. Now it's nowhere near what we're trying to get across here, but it might be a step in the right direction. or in a direction, maybe not the right one. What we might want to do is reduce the size of that and maybe blur them a little bit. So if we go to here, click effect, click distort or blur even, and add a blur to those images. If we zoom in those shapes, sorry, effect, blur, click on preview, take your radius down a touch, click OK. Okay, so all we've done is apply a blur, so it's not a really drastic circle. Okay, and then we're going to create a new swatch, and then we're definitely going to move on to Inkscape. I'm just getting a bit carried away here. Drag that over, put that there. Now if we click on this shape here that we've applied that first swatch to, if we click on this one, as you can see, it's definitely a step in the right direction. Okay, it's adding those dots a bit similar to those dots there, but they're a bit too spaced out, but we're getting there quite nicely with that shape there. So you can see how it's quite easy to make a nice 3D looking image using the gradient mesh tool in Illustrator. Okay, using some really advanced tools, but if you bear with those tools, they'll allow you to learn some other tools in terms of your selection, your eyedropper as well. It allows you to get the grips with those as well. So I'm going to save this document. I'm going to make it available to you guys. I'll just save that into me graphics, teaching, Crafty Creatives, Crafty Illustrations. Put it in session 3 for your Illustrator there. I'll call this Pear tutorial. I'll just put Illustrator. I'm just going to save that, and I'm going to save it as yeah, CS6 should do it. If you need it saving as a different version, an early version than that, drop me an email and I'll do that for you. Okay, so that's where we're at with that. Okay, we're going to try and apply this knowledge to our Inkscape now, and then we're going to try and apply that knowledge of a gradient mesh onto our lovely car. Okay, so remember guys, if you go to Inkscape, click on this little looking icon here at the bottom, or type it in or search for it here. There's my Inkscape there, so I'm going to click on that. It's going to open Inkscape here. I'm going to click on File, New. And there's my document now, okay? Well, I've created 2 documents, okay? So remember, we're going to go through exactly the same process to bring that pair in, okay? Now remember, we've done it in 2 different ways, and I'm going to repeat that again just so you're familiar with how to bring in images. So if you go to File, first of all, we're going to remember, if we go to the pair, we save that on our computer, the first method. So that's already saved on my computer. So if you go to Inkscape, just get rid of one of those, click on that, we can go File. Now in Illustrator we have it's File, Place, to place an image, but in Inkscape it's File, Import. So we click File, Import. It's going to bring up a window and it's going to ask us where it wants us to look for that image. So click on our desktop, that pair is there, click Open. Gives you a lot of options. I like to wing it, so I just press OK without reading it. If it goes in first time, there's no issues, then happy days. If there is a problem, then I might repeat that process and then give those options a few more, another look. But your computer's not going to blow up. It's just you're just bringing in an image. Okay, so we've brought that image in there, and we have layers here, I believe. Duplicate, copy. I'm just looking for our layers to show you. Here, there's our layers here. You click on that button there, there's our layers. Okay, so I'm going to call this Pear. So we'll double click on layer 1, call it Pear Photo. Press enter. And we want to lock it like we did last. Well, we will want to lock it, but we won't do it just yet. The other way to bring in the image, if you remember, was my sneak little way, was pressing print screen on your keyboard, the print screen button. Be careful where you have your cursor, because I'm going to have my cursor here on the leaf. If I press print screen, it's going to capture that cursor as well. But this is really a really cool way of just quickly getting an image in if you're just using it as a reference. And then you just go File, Paste in Place, and there's the Pear. Now this looks a little bit confusing. I'm just showing you two different ways. For those of you who understand what's gone on there, I've just took a screenshot of my screens attached to my computer, and as you can see, I've got two screens here. Okay, we only want this one shape, so I'm going to try and crop that out if I can. I haven't done this before in Inkscape. I'm learning Inkscape just as much as you are at the minute. So in Illustrator, all you do is you create a shape around the area that you want to mask. Click on that, hold down Shift, click on the background image, right click, and then you would click Create Clip Mask or Set Mask. Something to do with a mask in Illustrator. So let's set mask. Right, there you go. So I didn't actually know what I was doing, but I had a rough idea what I did in Illustrator, which allowed me to kind of navigate my way around doing similar in Inkscape. Okay, so you might not know the exact, but you should be able to figure it out if you understand one method. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this one. I'm going to click on this Pear. I'm going to duplicate that Pear. So I've got two at the same opacity. I'm going to lock that layer. I want to create a new layer, and I'm going to call it working layer, like we did in Illustrator, or working drawing, I think I called it. I'm going to add it above the current layer. There we go there. That's locked, and as in Illustrator, you can turn them on and off. But if you click on the working layer, you'll be performing any actions in that layer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to press Control in Inkscape and use your wheel to zoom in, and we're just going to roughly draw around our image using our pen tool. But what I want to do first, guys, is just want to cement our learning from last week. Remember, we created quite a complex shape by using basic shapes. So I'm going to do that first. And I'm just going to create a load of different circles to get across these curves to try and make these curves. And it's just, I know we covered this last week, but it's just really to cement the learning that we've been doing. So I'm making loads of circles here. Just going to fill that little hole in with that. I'm going to create another circle here to do that. Another circle. I'm going to push that over there. Move that in a bit to there. Maybe do another one there. Another one, little one there. And maybe one last one here. And what I'm going to do is I want to select all these shapes, and we should have a pathfinder tool or option somewhere. Now again, bear with, because I'm learning Inkscape at the same time as you guys. Let's see. Just going to quickly try and figure this one out. How did I do it last week? Duplicate. Okay, I'm going to have to do a little bit of a Google search. Let's have a look. This is a really cool tutorial. So before the break, I didn't think we could use gradient mesh in Inkscape, but it turns out we can, and it's a really good tutorial. And I've copied this and I've put it into our presentation. So I'm just going to do a quick Google search for combining shapes in Inkscape, and this is exactly the way I learned.
Hey there, it's Stephanie from Janku.
So I would urge you, if you ever get stuck, don't get disheartened. There's thousands, millions of different bits of resource out there. Just search and you'll find the answer. Okay.
Today I'm going to show you how to manipulate tools. You can see. All right, so we're going to start off with the first rectangle and circle. I'm going to go to that, which
right, that's just reminded me there from last week. So go back here, select the image. There's your selection tool there. Select the two images. If you've got path, then you can union them. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of these because this was just a test. I'm going to select all these images. I'm going to path union. So that was really good learning for me, and hopefully it was a good reminder to you guys. So as you can see, it looks a bit more like a bunch of grapes than it does a pear, but we can keep on manipulating this shape and and adding more shapes to it. And select them both, union. We can subtract shapes as well, remember. Path difference, okay. And we'll do the same here. Now this is a really good way of, if you're not really that confident with the pen tool, and in my experience, practice is pretty key really to be learning complex tools. You just need to keep on practicing, but don't get disheartened. But if you really want to achieve something, if you've got something that you really want to turn out quickly, if you've got some artwork that you might be doing for somebody, you've got a birthday card or something to do for somebody, and you really don't have the time to learn it, it might take you a little bit longer, then this is a really good way of doing that. Okay, of creating a complex shape. So for example, instead of using the pen tool, you could use these basic shapes just to roughly get the shape that you want. Okay, it's a good way of doing that. And then what you can do is click on the shape, zoom in, and then you can start pulling those shapes out. Okay, see these handles here, start pulling those handles out, click on the point, click on the handle, and that gets you pretty much where you need to be. You can subtract the points there to give the curve a little bit more of a chance. pull out those points, maybe subtract that one there. So a good little recap from last week, that, yeah. Get rid of that. Probably get rid of that point there. Clicking on the point with my edit paths by nodes, clicking that minus, that's getting rid of that there. I'm going to click on this point here to pull that out. Zoom in here, probably get rid of that point there. And this point here, can we do something with it? Let's turn it into a curve by maybe using that button there. And let's see how that looks. That looks alright. Okay, so I'm going to create a copy of that. That's just a recap using the basic shapes. I'm going to pull that to one side. Now, to use a pen tool, if you want to learn how to use to use a Bezier tool, they call it in Inkscape. It's very similar to Illustrator. Click on your point, move, click another point and put your curve in, and then it predicts where that next curve is going to be, which is quite cool. If you messed up like I have there, usually if you press backspace, it will get rid of that point, which it has there. You want to zoom out a touch, and again we're just making it up here because we can't really see what's going on. Click move and pull that out. There we go. Just roughly doing this, roughly. Doesn't need to be perfect because what we're actually doing is trying to learn this gradient tool here in Inkscape. So there we go. Zoom out a bit, and remember the line in the sand or the circle in the sand. You need to join your image up and make it to close it. Otherwise, if you had a wall, if you built a wall and you poured within that wall loads of paint, that paint should be contained within those 4 walls, for example. But if you don't join the walls up and there's a gap, the paint is going to bleed out. Okay, and it's a similar kind of scenario in Illustrator and Inkscape. If you don't connect that point, the color won't bleed out, it just won't apply the color because it's not contained. Okay, so that's what you need to bear in mind when it comes to drawing any of your points in Inkscape or in Illustrator. So I've drew a rough shape there. That blue pear there is just the other version of or other way of drawing that shape. Now, before the break, I had a quick look, or during the break, I had a quick look at how to create this mesh tool, and I am very fresh to this, so you're gonna probably see a lot of mistakes here, but let's give it a go. So the gradient mesh tool is about 2/3 down. If you hover over it here, it looks like this. It's a square on a little slant with 4 points on the corners. If you click on it, okay, how do we do this again? And then you go to, oh, it's a fill, wasn't it? Yeah. If you create a fill, let's start again. Okay, so let's click this olive color or a color. Click that to turn that shape into that color. Okay, and what we can do, like we did in Illustrator, we'll move that to one side. Zoom in again, and remember the paint picker tool you had in Illustrator, you've got the same one in Inkscape. So that olive is a little bit too dark and it's not the same color as this pear. So what I want to do is click that, get roughly that color for the middle part of that pear. Now, if we go to our gradient mesh tool here, click on the fill button, which is in the bottom left hand corner. We've got a few options here. You want to click this, create new mesh gradient at the top, you want to click this, because this is the solid color at the minute, flat color. But if you come over here and click that, it creates the mesh gradient tool, okay, or the mesh gradient over that pear. Now what we need to do, I'm going to press Control and Z once to make it flat again, because I just want to show you something quickly. Click on this mesh gradient tool. It allows you to split your shape up into rows and columns. Now remember, in Illustrator we created our own curves, didn't we, by creating these meshes, and we went around the shape, and then we discovered actually we put too much mesh in there, too many lines, and we need to take some out to give it a bit more of an organic gradient for that shape. Well, in Inkscape they do it a little bit differently, and they have they carve that image up for you, or that shape up for you, right? And I'm going to show you a different shape to start off with, just to show you what I mean. So if we click on the rectangle tool or the square tool, create a square, click on our mesh tool here, click on new, and make sure that we have 2 rows and 2 columns. If we click on this, you won't be able to see it, but it's created 2 rows and 2 columns, and it's carved up that image into 2 rows and 2 columns, so it doesn't have the defined curves. But if you click on this tool, I think it is, just having a quick play around. Okay, let's go back a minute. Click on the color here, click on that. We want to change the colors in these different areas. Now, if we click on the color mesh tool, click on that handle. Might have to use my little friend Google again, because that's literally slipped my mind. We're going to attach this video to our presentation.
I'm going to start with the shade of like this pinkish magenta sort of shade down here, and now we're going to grab the mesh tool, click on that, and just make sure you're preset that both of these presets menu mesh gradient out of our rectangle here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on this center node right here, and I'm going to make this like a
right. So this cool cat here clicked on the center node, which I can't seem to do. That's a fill color. That's a great mesh fill. Let's draw another one. Oh, hang on a minute. That's that. Let's click on that. Toggle. Gonna have to go back to our little tutorial. Let's go back a couple of steps.
They are as I have them. We're going to come over here to the fill and stroke menu, and over here where it says mesh gradient, I'm going to click on that, and it's going to create a mesh gradient out of our rectangle here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on this center node.
Right, let's repeat this over here. Draw that rectangle. We're going to create a mesh out of that. We've done those, which is great. Clicked on that, which is even better. And then he said gonna click on one of these points here. No, it's definitely not that one. Maybe this is one I've done earlier. This is one I did earlier. So if we click on that, we've got that selected. Click on that. Can we click on some of these points here? Click on that. That's the colors there. Okay. So if we change that color to that, no, it doesn't work. On that. Sorry guys, I think I've hit a little bit of a wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off an Illustrator, and I'm going to do a bit more homework myself on this gradient mesh tool in Inkscape. Give it one last shot before I pack in. Toggle. Feel as though I'm missing something quite easy because I was playing around with it before. But no, I can't. Right, okay, we're going to go back to Illustrator for the time being. Apologise for that. But as with anything, it just takes some playing around in order to get what you need. Okay, and sometimes it is quite difficult swapping between two different programs, and it is probably something really simple. So if you guys can figure that out, come back next week, then brilliant. But I'm going to do a bit more research when we finish for the day's session, and I'll try and figure that out. The good thing is Inkscape does have a gradient mesh, and it does work. And when I was playing around with it before I started the session, it seemed to be a little bit more straightforward than Illustrator. So we'll get back to this next week. What I want to do is I want to quickly swap back to Illustrator. I want to open up our artwork, and I want to quickly, before we finish for today's session, I want to zoom in on the car. I want to take what we've learned in Illustrator using the gradient mesh tool. I want to click on the car that we created last week. I want to click on the mesh tool, and I want to create some contours on this car, because that's what we said we were going to do. Have one there, have one there. And remember, we don't want to get too carried away with these contours, because that's what we did last time and it didn't work very well. So we'll zoom in a bit, just add a few. Let's add them to the wrong place. That'll do. Okay, and maybe add one more there, and we'll get rid of these because we've got an extra one. Okay, so I'll get rid of that one as well, and I'll keep that one there. Right, so what we want to do is change that to the gradient tool. So let's find the gradient tool, just here, and let's say we want to select this portion of the car, and we want to give that a highlight there. There we go. Maybe not too much of a highlight like that. Let's say let's go to our, see if we can go to our color wheel, pick a lighter pink. That's better. Okay, and then let's go to our lasso tool, select the bottom, and this is going to be in shade because it's at the bottom here. Select that, and then we're going to get a nice dark pink or purple. That's great. Okay, it's also colored the wheels. We don't want that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click away from that image, take these wheels and move them away for the time being, and then go back to the car, do the same thing again. So rectangular tool, select those points there, going to click my eyedropper, which is similar, the same tool in Inkscape, click the darker color there. Then we're probably going to have where the wheels go. We'll zoom out a bit now. I'll group these wheels. I'll move the wheels down, because what we do have on cars is we usually have like a curve here. So I'm going to try and just create that kind of like arch that we have on cars. I'll do one here as well. Maybe move. Oh. Move that up a touch. Have to move these wheels out of the way again. There we go. Move that up a touch as well. Okay, and I might add another curve here by pressing the mesh tool. Click add there, and then I'll click a couple of curves here as well. Get rid of that one. And hopefully what this is going to do is add a few curves where the wheel's going to go. So this I want in shade, so I'm going to just group these with my lasso tool. I'm going to maybe click on my eyedropper, click a darker purple. It's getting there, but I'm going to go back a bit and zoom it in a touch more. Selection tool. So I'm going to select this area. That's better. Getting there. Zoom out a bit. Now it's getting there. It's not perfect, but it's definitely getting there. And then we're probably going to have some shade highlight around here as well. So I'll select that. See if I can put some light on there as well. It's a bit too drastic. But if I get rid of a few curves maybe. Get rid of that one. No, keep that one. Get rid of that. That's getting a little bit better. Maybe get rid of this one. It's getting there. And then if we use our direct selection tool, we might be able to manipulate that a touch more. That's getting there, isn't it? Should really put these wheels on a separate layer because it's becoming a bit annoying now. I'll just move them out of the way. And you can get the point there. And it's just a case of really just playing around with this image and adding curves taking curves away. I'm going to add one more curve here by clicking the mesh. Click one there, that's it. And get rid of that one. And just controlling where you want that curve to be. So clicking on the point, moving the point around, manipulating where you want there. Maybe get rid of that, this one maybe. That's getting there. And just have a play around, guys. I mean, don't forget, cool little trick is to that's taking shape quite nicely from a flat object. Don't forget, always save your work. If you do any drastic changes, I always usually go File, Save As, and create. Oh, don't do that. Always go File, Save As, and I'll just put a 1 on the end or a 2, save it. So I've got a few different versions. If I'm creating also another good way to, if you're really happy with something, always good practice to make a copy so you've got it there in case you make any mistakes. But that is the gradient mesh tool. I'm learning as I'm teaching, so hopefully it gives you a bit of confidence to see me make a few mistakes, so you can try it yourself. It doesn't matter if you make a few mistakes. That's how we learn. And it's really quite addictive, really, when you can see. You can't really predict how it's going to work until you start playing around with it, but it is a really cool cool tool that you can use there. And not only is it good for mimicking like things like this Pear, for example, which I think I was quite happy with that. It's also good for doing like these really kind of like abstract shapes. I know I'm waffling on a bit, but I feel as on it give you something a bit more back, since I couldn't really figure out that gradient mesh tool in Inkscape. So just want to show you something else I saw on it quite quickly before we finish for the day's session, and that was I'm just going to show you, and we can maybe play around with this a little bit more next week. Just close that. Just go to a normal color. You can do something like this. I'm going to create just really manipulating this shape so it's a bit more of like a, I don't know, like a drip or a blob or whatever you want to call it. Okay, and then they use this gradient mesh tool. You know, carve it up as you would normally carve up your object, and maybe one more. And then what they did was they added some really cool effects to that shape. Okay, so it doesn't need to be a photorealistic kind of end result. You know, you can make some really cool like shapes that could form a background or something. You know, you could put that on a gradient itself. Move that out of the way. Cut those, paste them on top. You could even carve this up. You know, and you can really get some really cool kind of abstract kind of images going on here. What else we got? So put some, undo that. That looks quite nice. Add some green in there maybe. And remember, all we're doing is we're using our lasso tool here to select the area that we want to apply a bit of colour. Add in your colour. Maybe you want to add a bit more there. There you go. A bit more there. And if you've got those generic kind of imagery on your mobile phones, for example, and they've got something that looks a bit like this, haven't they, on like the Android phones for backgrounds and things like that. So, for example, if you're designing some artwork for, or some kind of let's say an app or something like that, if you're designing an app, you could really play around with like a good background for a phone, for example, and then you could put your your apps could be, or the applications on the mobile phone could be there, couldn't they? Like that, and then you might have something like that for your backspace that you have on your mobile phones, don't you? There's your back. It's usually in a grey. Let's say white. You get the picture, don't you? So you could easily, it doesn't need to be a hard kind of bit of craft that we're creating. We could be creating some digital artwork which is going to be used to communicate an idea. It doesn't need to be screen printed t-shirt or anything like that, and as you can see, I've just in one few minutes we've created quite a cool, interesting looking bit of artwork there. Okay, so I'll save this. I'll clean this image up a little bit. I'll save me progress. I'll just put that in an abstract layer, and I'll make that available in our presentation. I've made a note to have a look at making some patterns for next week, and we'll try and apply some patterns to maybe our car, and maybe try and sort this out a little bit, and definitely try and refine our learning a little bit better for the Inkscape gradient mesh tool. Great thing is it's there, and I have played around with it a little bit, and it does work quite nicely once you know how to use it. So I guess it's just a case of playing around, isn't it, and just trying to figure it out. So I'll do that, and I'll get back to you next week with me progress on that. All right. If you've got anything else that you'd like me to look at, give me a shout. And what we're going to do next week is, like I say, we're going to have a look at patterns, how to create patterns, basic patterns in Illustrator and Inkscape, and then we're going to try and build that artwork up a little bit more to create that final bit of artwork for our 70th birthday. And then we're going to it'll be session 4 next week, yeah. So we'll look at a couple of cool more tools, and then for session 5 we'll end up creating that overall bit of artwork, and then we'll apply it to the different formats that we've talked about before. So the banner for the birthday banner, the invitation, and the birthday card. Okay, so any other cool tools and tips that you might pick up between now and next week, write them down, so we can discuss them next week. Let me know how you get on with that gradient mesh tool. It is a bit complicated when you get when you first start using it, but my advice, as you see me play around with it, the smaller the number of shapes, the better. The smaller number of contour lines you've got, the better to start off with, and then you can start using when you want a bit more control, then you can add a few more points. So that's the gradient mesh tool. That's your lasso tool. Select the points that you want to change in terms of the color. You've also got your color picker there if you're actually referring to a color of an actual car, for example. You can pick the color up and choose the color from a different source. So you've got the gradient mesh, you've got the lasso tool to select the point. To move the points about and manipulate the curves in the point, you use your direct selection tool and you click on the point and just move it about. And you can also move the anchor points about as well. And yeah, just have a play around, see how you get on. Let me know how you get on, and we'll touch base next week with a bit more of an idea on how to do that in Inkscape, and we'll touch on a few other cool tools and techniques in creating some vector artwork. Okay, don't forget, guys, please enroll on our forms, the links of which are on our presentation. I will put those video tutorials that are referred to during the session in our presentation here. There's a really good one for making patterns as well, so I'll leave that one in there too. I also found some other cool tutorials which I'll put on another slide as well. So just have a play around and see what you think. All right, guys, but please fill in our enrollment form. There's a link. Email it to me if you have any issues. Give me an email and complete the survey for today's session, please. Okay, thanks very much and have a great weekend, and I'll see you back here this time, same time next week. All right, thanks very much and goodbye.